Imagine trying to completely upgrade the economic software of an entire nation. Well, today we're unpacking exactly how Indonesia did just that. In this explainer, we're going to trace the evolution of Indonesia's economic constitution. We'll be looking at its massive shift from those pure post-colonial ideals back in 1945 all the way to the modern, sustainable economic standards that literally dictate how natural resources are managed today. Let's get right into it. So put yourself in the shoes of a newly independent nation. When you're drafting your founding rulebook, you face a massive, kind of terrifying fork in the road. You have to ask, should the national economy be driven by the free market individualism of capitalism or the strict state-owned collective of communism? Back in 1945, this was the defining global debate. But, brilliantly, the founders of Indonesia looked at both of those options and just said, nope, neither. They actually chose an entirely unique path called the family principle. They explicitly rejected both pure capitalism and pure communism, and instead went for a system rooted entirely in mutual cooperation. It was a really bold option C in a heavily A or B world. Now, this concept is known as asas kekeluargaan, which translates to the family principle. Basically, it dictates that the economy is a joint effort based on collectivism. To founders like Muhammad Hatta, the ideal business model wasn't some massive corporate monopoly, and it wasn't a faceless state factory either. It was the cooperative. This was a radical post-colonial baseline prioritizing working together over cutthroat competition. So here is our roadmap for today. Number 1, the original blueprint. Number 2, the modern constitutional update. Number 3, shaping resource laws. And number 4, the state control debate. All right, part 1, the original blueprint. To really understand Indonesia's economy today, we have to look at the original text of Article 33 of the 1945 Constitution. And the magic number here is 3. The entire original constitutional framework for managing the economy of a vast, incredibly resource-rich archipelago consisted of just 3 brief paragraphs. It was concise, highly philosophical, and honestly, given the stakes, surprisingly short. Okay, so what did those 3 original paragraphs actually say? Well, paragraph 1 established the economy as a joint effort based on that family principle we just talked about. Paragraph 2 mandated that the state controls the branches of production that affect the lives of the masses. And paragraph 3, which is probably the most famous, declared that the earth, water, and natural resources are controlled by the state for the greatest prosperity of the people. So collective prosperity and firm state control. That was the ultimate baseline. Moving right along to part 2, the modern constitutional update. As the decades passed and globalization really took hold, the country realized, hey, we need an operating system update. From 1945 all the way to 2002, those original 3 paragraphs were the only economic guide. But in 2002, during the Fourth Amendment, Indonesia added 2 brand new paragraphs to Article 33. These were specifically designed to tackle modern, global challenges that the founders just couldn't have predicted back in the era of telegraphs. And wow, the shift was dramatic. Expanding from 3 paragraphs to 5 made the law infinitely more detailed and operational. The whole focus evolved from simple state ownership to what they called economic democracy, which baked in these vital layers of sustainability. Essentially, the Constitution went from just pointing in a general philosophical direction to providing a really precise measuring stick, complete with modern metrics for sectoral laws. And this brings us to the new paragraph 4, which is an absolute game changer. It introduced 6 new principles for the national economy. We're talking togetherness, fair efficiency, sustainability, environmental insight, independence, and balanced progress. The absolutely crucial takeaway here is that efficiency could no longer just mean making the most profit possible. It had to be fair efficiency, carefully balanced with social justice and the actual capacity of the environment. So, the philosophical shift here was absolutely profound. The old perspective often leaned toward a very literal reading of state ownership, with the state basically just acting as a landlord holding the keys. But this new focus transformed the state into an active manager of sustainable economic democracy. It served as a constitutional correction against practices that had gotten way too liberal or oligarchic. It demanded active, responsible governance for the future. Which leads us perfectly into part 3, shaping resource management laws. Because you might be wondering, how do these high-level constitutional concepts actually impact a real-world coal mine or an offshore oil rig? Well, it works through a very specific legal flow. It starts with a constitutional mandate for prosperity and sustainability, found in paragraphs 3 and 4. Then, that newly added paragraph 5 acts almost like a doorway, explicitly delegating the execution of those ideals to the legislature. Finally, walking through that doorway gives us the specific sectoral laws, and those laws dictate the exact on-the-ground rules for mining, oil, and gas. Because of that constitutional doorway, heavy-hitting regulations like the mining law, known as UU Minerva, and the oil and gas law, or UU Migas, are born. Now, here's the really vital takeaway. These aren't just technical administrative guidelines. No way. They are direct instruments of the Constitution itself. That means if they fail to protect the environment, they are literally failing a constitutional mandate. To see just how active this connection is, we only need to look at the government's rationale for recently updating the mining law. They explicitly stated their goal was to return the spirit of Article 33 to state control over natural wealth for the people's welfare. So they are actively blending the original language of 1945 with the 2002 updates to justify and shape modern policy. Now for part 4, the state control debate. Because, of course, translating these high-minded ideals into billions of dollars of actual resource extraction is going to create some massive friction. Right at the center of that friction is a concept called Hak Menguasai Negara, or HMN. This translates to the right of state control over natural resources, and it comes straight from that original paragraph 3. But here's the million-dollar question. What does control actually mean in the 21st century? Does it mean the state has to grab a shovel and dig the mine itself, or can it hire a private company to do the heavy lifting? Well, the Constitutional Court kind of acts as the referee here, and they've actually provided a landmark definition. They stated that state control means the power to regulate, manage, administer, supervise, and set policy. So this really clarifies things. Control doesn't strictly mean 100% direct, literal ownership. The state can definitely involve private or foreign entities, but, and this is a big but, it has to maintain absolute authority to steer the policy toward public prosperity. As a result, the Constitutional Court continually uses Article 33 to maintain this really delicate balance. If a law leans toward extreme privatization, handing way too much power to private entities and stripping the state of its supervisory role, the court strikes it down. On the flip side, it also avoids extreme eidatism, where the state just suffocates all private enterprise. It's a constant, incredibly high-stakes constitutional balancing act. Which leaves us with a really vital question to ponder as we wrap up. Do our current extraction practices truly reflect this constitutional balance of prosperity and sustainability? The next time you're reading the news about a new mining permit or some big energy policy, try viewing it through this lens. Ask yourself, are we hitting those modern metrics of environmental insight and fair efficiency? Because ultimately, that is the true test of Indonesia's evolving economic constitution. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll catch you next time.